Hello everyone and welcome to DJ.Studio. This is the Advanced DJ.Studio course where we'll be discussing how to edit, adjust, and perfect your mix using local files right here on DJ.Studio. My name is DJ Carlo and I'll be your instructor for this round. We'll kick things off where we left off in the basic DJ.Studio course, utilizing the same playlist we loaded up over there. If you haven't seen that video, I'd highly recommend checking it out again before we move along, just so you're familiar with how DJ.Studio works. Starting off from here, we'll hit the Automix button down here on the left to find the perfect combination for our selected tracks. Now, before DJ.Studio does what it does best, a window will pop up with 3 different tabs: Automix, Playlist Ordering, and Transitions. The first tab is simply to let DJ.Studio automix, which we already utilized in the previous basic video. The second tab here, Playlist Ordering, has multiple options you can tinker around with in order to have DJ.Studio adjust the automixing of your music. First, you see the slider bar here, which allows you to change the priority of your auto mixing. Sliding it left will make DJ.Studio prioritize BPM, which will result in a mix with a steady and progressive BPM flow. However, this will likely result in some non-harmonious transitions. Sliding it all the way right will prioritize key over BPM and will result in a completely harmonious mix as much as possible with the tracks you've selected, but may result in some extremely wild BPM jumps if your selected BPM range is that wide, though it's up to your personal preference. I prefer to keep this slider in the middle and let DJ.Studio do its thing in finding the best balance between BPM and key for a harmonious mix. Here to the right, you'll see another drop-down tab listing the various analyzing times you can give DJ.Studio to auto-mix your music. The longer you go, the more combinations you can get. However, I doubt you'll need to go for the longer times, given how efficient DJ.Studio is at auto-mixing music. Below that, you'll see 2 options to lock in your first and last tracks as well. So if you want to bookend your mix with specific tracks, then DJ.Studio's got you covered there. The final tab in this window allows you to customize how DJ.Studio does its transitions with the Automix feature. The first option we have here, Transition Style, sets a default transition style for all your mixes. We have the default DJ.Studio presets, namely bass swap, crossfade, high to low, low to high, and echo out. Choosing one of these will automatically have DJ.Studio apply them to all your transitions once you hit Automix. I'd highly recommend familiarizing yourself with each transition first and selecting which one best fits your needs before selecting one to use on your current project. Over here to the right, you have an option to adjust the transition length, and for those of you who are wondering, a bar is typically 4 beats, which is common in most dance music genres. However, personally, I'd rather let DJ.Studio decide on the length and utilize the automatic option here. Next, we can toggle synchronized tempo, which has DJ.Studio beat match your tracks for you as the transition is happening. This is arguably one of the most useful features of Automix, as it does most of the heavy lifting that makes a mix a mix. On the right side, you can see the option to have DJ.Studio start the beat sync either immediately at the start of the transition with the full mix option, or at the halfway point with the second half option. Below these, you have the mix in and mix out point options. Here you can adjust where in your tracks you'd want DJ.Studio to start mixing in or mixing out. You have the option to start the mix in 1 bar, 4 bars, 8 bars, or 16 bars after the start of your song. You also have the options for how many bars you'd want to start mixing out before your song ends. Now, this is highly track dependent, so I'd recommend leaving this on automatic and adjusting it manually later on. Once you're done making your adjustments, hit that Automix button and let's get everything in order. Now, speaking of order, DJ.Studio does its best to place all the tracks in the best order possible, with thousands if not millions of possible combinations to get things right. However, sometimes we want certain songs to be together in the mix, despite them not being harmonious with each other. Chalk it up to personal preferences or whatnot. In this case, we can head over to the playlist tab up here and easily reorder our songs. Here you'll see each track's title, artist, transition parameters, length, key, energy, and harmonic match. On the very left side, you'll see a group of 6 circles which you can click on to drag a track around in the playlist to change its position. Now, doing this after already auto-mixing your music will result in some changes on the right side, namely in the match column. This column shows you how exactly the tracks are harmoniously mixed based on DJ.Studio's algorithm. They can be perfectly matched, energy boosted, diagonally mixed, or in some cases, not harmoniously mixed at all. Now, for those of you wondering as well, what is all this harmonious mixing hubbub is about? Well, harmonious mixing is when 2 mixed songs are either in the same key or in complementary keys. Using our examples here, we can see that 2 songs are in the key of 9A. And hearing both of them together shows that they sound great when mixed. It's the same case for songs that are either 1 key up, 1 key down, or on the major or minor scale of the same key. Quickly pulling up the Camelot wheel, which I personally use for my mixing, we can see which keys complement each other. A deeper look of this is available on a blog post on DJ.Studio's website, and I highly recommend reading it to learn more about the ins and outs of harmonious mixing. That way, you can determine ways beyond DJ.Studio's standard algorithm to find the perfect song blends. So once you're done with the playlist section, let's move on to the Studio tab, which is arguably the most complex portion of DJ.Studio. This tab allows you to edit your tracks, control your beat grid, completely customize each transition, and more. Down below, you'll see that the Studio tab opens 5 more editing modes for you to choose from. The first one on the very left is the Zoom tab, and this allows you to zoom in and out of your timeline without any of the other options visible, so you can completely focus on the transitions. The second tab opens up your playlist, similar to how it is on the upper playlist tab. The right 2 tabs open each selected track's info and the video settings. In the middle, you'll see our main feature, the transition tab. Now, before we really dive in the transition tab, we have to make sure each song on our timeline is aligned with the beat grid. This makes sure that DJ.Studio properly aligns the music and mixes them properly while doing transitions. So instead of this, we'll always have this. And the first thing we'll do is we'll open up the Tracks tab and select one of our songs. Zoom in and click on this button here to nudge the track's beat grid. This should make the song's beat grid pop up, and you can check if your track is properly aligned. Clicking on the left arrow will nudge your beat grid left, and clicking on the right arrow will nudge it right. If the tracks are already properly on the beat grid, there's no need to adjust this setting. At times, despite its best efforts, DJ.Studio may not always get the correct first beat in a song. This typically occurs in remixes which don't start on beat, have extra elements at the beginning, and the like. So to remediate this, we can select the first beat button here and adjust our track's first beat like this. This ensures that our songs start on beat and are properly mapped to the beat grid all the way through. Once you've checked all your songs for their alignment, we can move to the Transition tab. Now, as you can see, the Transition tab gives you a wide range of parameters to play around with for your transitions. On the very left, we have the preset transition types we saw earlier in the video. But you'll notice below that, there are 4 more slots for your own presets. Once you've tinkered around with your transitions and find one you'd like to constantly use, you can save those transitions there for future use. Now, how exactly do you make these new transitions? Well, looking to the right of the preset tab, we have all the different elements that make up the transition. First, we have the volume window, where you can choose the different ways you want your volume levels to interact during the transition. Crossfade will have one track's volume fade out gradually as the next one comes in. Fade in will have your next track's volume come in while the previous track keeps playing along, while the fade out option will have the new song come in at full volume, whereas your previous track will gradually fade away. Besides these options, you can also dictate how far into the transition you want the parameters to trigger with 4 options: 25, 50, 75, and 100%. You can see how this adjusts the volume markers on the timeline, showing you where the volume comes in and dips out. Another option here is to have the volume swap out, with options to let this either run for 1, 2, or 4 bars. 0, of course, meaning this option is off. This is best used in conjunction with the other parameters we'll be discussing later on, as using this alone will sharply cut the volume of your previous track and suddenly play the next song out of nowhere. Finally, bookending this, you have the manual option, which gives you complete control over your volume. This option is also available for all other parameters, except for effect in and effect out. So for the rest, we'll focus on the parameters DJ.Studio can help you out with. Once you've mastered all of the built-in parameters, you can go all out and have fun with the manual setting. Moving on, we have the bass window, where similarly to the volume settings, you can play around with the way your track's bass frequencies interact with one another. The way the bass parameters play around is similar to how they interact in the volume option, so I won't dive too deep into this anymore. The same can be said as well for the mid and high frequencies over on the right. I will mention that finding the right balance with all three is necessary to ensure your tracks sound as sonically similar to each other as possible after the transition is done. As a quick breakdown, in case you're wondering which channel affects what part of the song, bass usually adjusts your track's lower frequencies, like the kick drum, bass notes, or lower percussions. The mid usually adjusts the track's melody, vocals, and other similar elements. The high finally adjusts the higher frequencies, like cymbals, hi-hat percussion, higher notes, and the like. Given finding the perfect EQ settings per transition will take quite a bit of balancing and work, but you'll find that getting the right result is always worth it. As a quick detour, let's direct our attention to the frames right beside our tracks here. So you can see there are 4 knobs here that also affect your low, mid, high, and trigger a filter. With these, DJ.Studio also allows you to play around with your track's EQ and add a filter effect while the song itself is playing. Moving any of these knobs will cause a broken line to pop up on the song's waveforms. Dragging it up and down will either increase or decrease the option selected, like so. Now, left-clicking on this line allows you to add points where you can adjust the parameters on your waveform. So, for example, you can drop the bass here and add a filter effect to the same area. Then bring it all back to normal over here. Above these knobs, you can also see a volume slider that will do the same thing to your tracks and allow you to play around and adjust your volume with the ability to customize where your tracks get quieter and louder as well. Once you're done playing around with this set of EQs, let's go back to the transition tab. Now, besides adjusting your track's EQ levels, DJ.Studio can also inject some effects to make your mix sound even more like what you'd hear in bars and clubs. Between all the EQ windows, you'll see these 3 windows labeled Filter, Effect In, and Effect Out. These 3 essentially add extra flair to your transitions, and they can give your mix that special sparkle to make each transition stand out even more. First, there's a filter window. Here you'll see presets, high to low and low to high. The filter effect acts like the filter knobs you'll see on many DJ controllers and mixers, with DJ.Studio being the one to turn the knob for you while transitioning between tracks. Utilizing high to low will slowly filter out your first song while slowly bringing in the second song. Low to high does the opposite, with your next track slowly being filtered in as the transition goes on. Similar to the volume and EQ options, you have the option here to dictate where you want the filter effect to take place during the transition. Next, we have the effect in, an extremely useful option for those who have songs with short intros. Only one parameter exists here, and that's for loop in. Now, loop in essentially loops a particular number of beats of your next song while doing the transition, before letting the song play once the transition block ends. For this, you have the option to let the song loop for 1 beat, 2 beats, 4 beats, 8 beats, or 16 beats. Do take note the numbers here don't refer to bars, but rather to the number of beats, so keep that in mind. Like I mentioned, using this particular option is very useful for songs with short intros. So if you want your songs to still have long blends despite their short intros, this would be the best option for that. Finally, we have the effect out window, which applies to tracks being mixed out of when doing transitions. This is arguably one of the most important effects applied during actual DJ mixing. So having this in DJ Studio really ups the ante for those wanting to add flair to their mixes. First up, we have the option to loop out, with similar parameters to the previously discussed loop in option. So you can have your outgoing track loop 1 beat, 2 beats, and so on, depending on what you see fit. Next, we have the reverb option, with parameters to make your reverb last either 1/32 of a beat, 1/16, 1/8, or 1/4. Finally, we have the echo out option, my personal favorite, as this is what I use all the time in my actual club mixes and DJ Studio mixes. So here, you have options to let the echo last 1/4 of a beat, half of a beat, 3/4 of a beat, 1 beat, or 2 beats. Personally, I prefer to keep mine set at 1/2, as this gives the tightest echo out without the previous song interfering with the next track. One thing to take note of as well is how by default, your effect in and effect out occurs in the very middle of the transition block. If you want to change where these effects will occur, simply click on this purple arrow here once you've selected your effect and move it around to where you desire. Now you have your transitions all nicely laid out, and you've got all your tracks in place. But one glaring issue may remain. The transitions are too long. Some tracks run out before the transition is even done, and all you have are quiet drums from the intro of your next song. Don't worry, DJ Studio's got you covered. If you remember from the basic module, I showed you how to lengthen or shorten your transition block on the timeline. However, DJ Studio can help make this easier as well with the 4 buttons here on the right side, labeled 4, 8, 16, and 32. These buttons denote how long in bars you want your transition to be. I like keeping mine very tight, so 4 works for the most part for me. But for those of you who like doing long blends, 32 bars should be right up your alley. Selecting a transition block and selecting one of these numbers will change your transition block's length for you. To the right of these transition length buttons, you have more helpful tools in making each transition sound as great as possible. This little button here enables beat sync, which snaps your tracks together at the same beat as the transition goes on. Disabling this is only recommended for songs you want to play end to end without being mixed. Otherwise, your songs will play unmixed and sound like a galloping horse. To the right of that, you have 3 buttons labeled free, half, and full. These buttons dictate where you want DJ Studio to start changing the BPM during the transition. Half will start at halfway through your transition, and full will start at the moment your transition block begins. So free gives you full creative control on this matter. Next to this, we have the lock button, which locks your transition in place, making sure nothing changes it. And we have the solo button, which toggles each track so you can listen to how each track is affected by your chosen transition options. This is especially useful when listening to sonically similar tracks, so you can make sure that each track has been properly adjusted to create the perfect transition. Finally, we have the metronome button, a handy list of keyboard shortcuts that comes up as a pop-up, zoom out and zoom in buttons, just in case you don't have a wheel on your mouse to magnify your timeline. Now, if you recall, we previously briefly touched upon the video tab here in the studio section of DJ.Studio. Beyond just adding colorful visuals to your audio mixes, you can actually expand and customize these visuals to create a truly unique auditory and visual experience with your mix. Each of these options can be applied to each individual song and not just the entire mix, so you'll never run out of things to do per track. Over here on the background settings, you'll see the 4 types of backgrounds we can utilize: animation, image, color, and album art. Each of these settings can be applied to different tracks, so you can really customize how you want your entire mix to look. First, with animation. As you've seen in the previous local files module, you can have DJ.Studio cycle through different animation styles to complement your mix. You can quickly cycle through all of them, or simply choose random to let DJ.Studio choose the animations for you. If you choose random, you can also choose how long you want to let the animation style run before it changes, with options for 8 to 64 bars available. Now, if you'd prefer to have a static image, you can do so as well by uploading an image to be displayed as a background of your mix. You can change the image per track too, so it doesn't get too stale. You also have the option to have a static color as your background, and you can select your desired color by doing this. And finally, you have the option to have your track's album artwork pop up in the background too. This is similar to how it's usually done on YouTube topic videos. Though, I'd recommend looking through your tracks to see whether or not they have album artwork in their ID 3 tags before committing to this. Tracks without any artwork will pull up a fairly boring default image, and you wouldn't want to drop the energy in your mix's visuals. Next up, we have the option to display your track's information. You have the option to have it displayed on the top, center, or bottom part of your screen. You can see how selecting different options will allow the text pop up in different places. Below this, you have a set of different options to play around to add a little extra visual flair on your screen. You have 2 check boxes for particles and the waveline. One will add a pretty cool particle effect on your video, and the other adds a waveline in the middle of the screen to more properly visualize your audio. Below that, you have the Spectrum Analyzer, which comes in 2 styles as you can see, and will change its position on your screen depending on where you decide to place your track information. You can also adjust the intensity of the spectrum to make it larger and adjust its blur to make it duller or sharper, depending on which style works best for you. Now, you may be wondering, how do the animations, images, and whatnot all transition from one track to another? The answer is a set of transitions available right here on DJ.Studio. Under the Transition tab, you can customize the way your visuals blend into one another. This can be a simple crossfade, an iris wipe, a heart, and many more. Playing around with all these different types of transitions will give you ideas on which one works best with the genres you choose. Dynamic and exciting visual transitions will always help elevate the auditory experience for your audience. Likewise, you can even pick out how long you'd want the visual transition to be, from a short 8 beats to a fairly lengthy 64 beats. Below that, you also have a global text, in case you want to add some text to your video as well. This can be anything you desire, such as your name, your mix's name, etc. Once you've properly fixed your transition blocks, made all your adjustments, and fixed up your video edits if you wanted a video mix, you're then ready to hit export. Now you'll notice that you have a wide variety of ways to export your newly made mix. One of these is the already previously discussed local file, which allows you to save your mix as an MP3 or WAV file for future playback. Now for local files, you also have the option to save your full video mix with a variety of quality choices: 720p, 1080p, and a fairly high definition 2160p. Below this, you have the option to export your mix as a DJ set, so that you can export DJ.Studio's Automix setlist to your DJ programs. You have the option to do it via M3U8 or TXT, and the option as well to include all the original audio along with your file. Personally, I prefer to use M3U8 just to show a few. Next, for all you Ableton users out there, you can also export this project as an Ableton file with two different options, vertical and horizontal. Personally, I use the horizontal option. Next, we have the YouTube tab, which allows you to export your video mix straight to your YouTube channel. Here you'll get similar options to saving your video as a local file, but with the added convenience of it going straight to YouTube. Finally, other than the option to back up your project, you also have the option to upload this mix straight to your Mixcloud as an audio project. All you'll need to do is log into your Mixcloud account with DJ.Studio, fill in a mix title and description, and of course, to say whether or not you want your mix to be private or unlisted on Mixcloud. Once you hit next, DJ.Studio will take care of bringing your music to the masses, or not if you clicked unlisted, and your whole mix will be uploaded to your Mixcloud account. There we go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that little deep dive into DJ.Studio, and I hope you keep making more mixes for all the world to see.